Welcome back to Human Reaction, your weekly source for independent commentary on news, culture, and politics, where it's always our mission to arm you with the tools you need to cut through the media misdirection and resist the mono-narrative. Please like and subscribe to our channel wherever you are. We do cover a variety of topics, so feel free to use the chapter marks below to find the subject that you are most interested in. This week, we're going to be diving into a few key topics from the past week, including the winners and losers from the second Republican primary debate. This week also marks 1 year since the bombing of the Nordstream pipeline, and a wild new report points the finger at Ukraine for its execution. We will get into that. Here to talk about those topics and more are my esteemed colleagues, David Rand and Kyle Mack. How are you guys?
Doing great. Happy Human Action Day.
What is that?
Yeah, it's Ludwig von Mises' birthday.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Which is kind of where the namesake for the show comes from, too.
Right.
So.
He wrote a treatise about economics, praxeology rather, called Human Action, and it greatly shaped my ideological formation.
Awesome. And if you haven't read it, check it out, although it is very dense. Human Action.
Yeah. There's a Bob Murphy wrote a study guide that really helps if you want to get through it that way. And then there's also kind of like summaries that have been done by it. Maybe we should do a summary sometime.
Maybe we should.
It'd be fun.
Yeah. We would love to invite you to join us on Discord to let us know what you'd like us to talk about and join in on the conversation. So check out the show notes or the description below the video. Click the link, jump into the Discord. We'd love to have you part of the conversation. Okay, let's jump into our deep dive topics. Top of the bill here, the second GOP primary debate. Once again, sans Trump. Wasn't there to defend himself from some pretty scathing attacks from the likes of Chris Christie and others. How did you guys feel about this debate? David, what was your overall impression of what went on there?
It kind of felt like a rerun. It kind of felt like watching a Seinfeld episode, and the whole time you're like, did I already watch this one? It feels very familiar. There was a couple different dynamics that were different, but the overall, the talking points were largely the same. What they talked about didn't really change that much. I didn't really feel like a lot of new information came out. Maybe I'm just being pessimistic. It was kind of towards the end of the week, and I was in a bad mood maybe, but I just did not... I didn't get a lot out of it. One dynamic that I thought overall was DeSantis came across a little bit better. Vivek didn't attack as much and was attacked even more. And I'm not sure if that really made a difference. And Nikki Haley was more shrill, and Chris Christie was Chris Christie. He attacked Trump the whole time, who wasn't even there. So it's kind of seems...
Tim Scott was also way more aggressive because he was basically a non-factor in the previous debate, but he was very attacking.
That's right.
Throughout the entire thing, in a very annoying fashion to me. It felt like it was very cringe to me.
I think really Tim Scott's real weakness is, despite being a U.S. senator and a very nice guy, he just doesn't have a lot of depth on some of his attacks. No. He would make an attack and then just not have anywhere else to go with it, to explain it to everyday people. It's hard for me to really describe, but it definitely looked like he needed better prep at minimum.
I tuned in a little late, so my perception might have been skewed, but I feel like when I tuned in, he didn't talk for maybe 20, 30 minutes. He didn't get a question sent his way for quite a long time. And there were a few candidates like that. Burgum was definitely part of that camp, although I think he started to get some questions sent his way towards the end of the debate. But it led to all of this shouting over each other. They all wanted to answer all the questions, and there just ended up being this cacophony of yelling that obviously didn't make for very good TV. I mean, I was laughing my ass off at it personally because I was like, this is ridiculous,
A lot of it really felt like there was a super PAC memo for strategy that went out to a bunch of people. And it's whenever the brown kid's talking, just start talking over him, make it like bad TV so that the moderators just move on and he can't respond back. That's what it felt like to me. Which is anytime Vivek was saying something, it's just like you were saying, Nikki Haley was very shrill throughout the whole thing. It was Nikki Haley or Tim Scott were just going over top of him. And Vivek couldn't really explain himself. He couldn't explain any of the attacks. And it was awkward. It just felt very awkward.
Yeah, I have to say, I think Nikki Haley definitely had some serious Karen energy.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Deep.
In fact, can we pull up that meme that we had made just for this special event?
Oh, I don't have that.
It's in Discord.
Yes.
You know where to find it.
Yes.
Come find all of our custom memes on Discord. Yeah.
We have a in-house memester.
But this is our first invite to the Discord, so we're really hoping that folks jump in, and then I like it if we get some good engagement, we'll be able to do a poll. Which issues should we dive in on? Because if you don't want to hear about the Republican primary debates, obviously skip this part. But maybe you could let us know what you want to hear about.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I'd like to talk over the manager, please. She says, wearing the signature Karen haircut. Also, I mean, and not to just rag on Nikki Haley. Okay, actually, to just rag on Nikki Haley. The outfit, man.
She didn't like it again?
No.
Do you have a picture of it, Kyle? Can you find it? Come on, get on it, Kyle.
We'll get there when we're on the video.
Jamie, pull it up.
Is that we have a video of her? Oh yeah. Okay. Well, we can get into those. But okay. So one thing, would it be better if these other candidates, other than Vivek, because I haven't seen a single other one, just did long form interviews so we could actually figure out who the heck they are? I mean, we are so spoiled with long form interview formats now that like anytime I'm watching something, because this was on Rumble, but it was sponsored by Fox News or Fox Business, so it was corny and short and unprofound and not deep and shallow and it just wasn't good, you know? Like it seemed like a big waste of time at the end of the day.
I think you could probably, with the exception of DeSantis, maybe you could correlate the candidates that are, I mean, primarily Vivek, the candidate that is going on the most media within the Republican primary field, going on the most podcasts and spending the most time talking directly to people in long form has the best poll numbers. You know, and obviously DeSantis was sort of touted as this, you know, new version of Trump or whatever, and I don't think he's living up to that. I thought he did better in this debate than he did in the last one. But it certainly seems like Vivek is still just sort of running away with the actual support of the people, because he's actually talking to the people and letting them know in depth with clarity what he plans to do to run the country. The rest of them are just talking in sound bites, and I think people see clear through that.
And importantly, who he is, right? Like it's hard to fake, you know, that many hours of content, right? Like to put on a character for that much hours. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of these candidates are afraid to get into this new way of campaigning. I suspect DeSantis' support levels aren't changing really, despite what he does, because most of the people who are supporting DeSantis and the Republicans, because it's different if you look at the general public versus Republicans. Most of the Republicans are supporting DeSantis or coalescing around him because they've already leapt to the conclusion, and that's likely unlike it's going to change, that he's the best guy to beat Trump. And that's the only reason why they support him.
Yeah.
The not Trump vote. And then from there, it's just like what he can do to try to pull together and maintain that coalition and then finally reach out and get some actual Trump supporters onto his side. And I suspect that's why he talked about Ukraine the way he did this time versus the way he has in the past, which is a very hedging bet. Do we want to watch that?
Sir, we will have to cut your mic, and I don't want to do that. I don't. So Governor DeSantis, let me go to you. Experts say President Putin has ordered assassinations across Europe, cheated on arms control treaties with the U.S., and seeks to work with China to force our decline. President Reagan believed that if you want to prevent a war, you better be prepared to fight one. Today, the Republican Party is at odds over aid to Ukraine. The price tag so far is $76 billion. But is it in our best interest to degrade Russia's military for less than 5% of what we pay annually on defense, especially when there are no U.S. soldiers in the fight?
It's in our interest to end this war, and that's what I will do as president. We are not going to have a blank check. We will not have U.S. troops, and we're going to make the Europeans do what they need to do. But they've sent money to pay bureaucrats' pensions and salaries and funding small businesses halfway around the world. Meanwhile, our own country is being invaded. We don't even have control of our own territory. We have got to defend the American people before we even worry about all these other things. And I watch these guys in Washington, D.C., and they don't care about the American people. They don't care about the fentanyl deaths. They don't care about the communities being overrun because of this border. They don't care about the Mexican drug cartels. So as Commander-in-Chief, I will defend this country's sovereignty.
With a question format like that, is it hard to believe that she hosted a Clinton Foundation event a week before the debate? Think about it. She makes it seem like some weird amount of Republicans don't support Ukraine spending. 70% oppose Ukraine spending. This is like a consensus issue in the Republican Party, and it's becoming a consensus issue for the entire public. where about almost 60%, it's 55 to 60%, depending on the poll you look at, oppose Ukraine spending at this point because of the points he points out. We have our own problems. But additionally to that, maybe it's cutting through to people like the whole unprovoked narrative is complete BS. Maybe it's actually coming across to people that they've had time to get access to some information, and so they're not getting it from Fox Business, that this was not out of the blue, that this is a long history in a very complicated situation that can't be boiled down to Russia bad, Ukraine good, blah, 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 blah. So the question is did he answer that strongly enough in a way that would actually court Trump voters? That's the question.
That's a good question. But I would also ask, why is the line that it is in the United States' best interest to degrade the power of the Russian military? Why is that a fact? Why are they professing that? That makes no sense.
That's what Tim Scott said. He couldn't go deeper than that because there is no deeper than that.
Right.
I know we're just asking questions at one another. But what is the difference between saying it's in our interest to degrade the Russian military? What's the difference between saying that and it's in our interest to declare war on Russia?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Those are really the same thing, aren't they?
Yeah, this is just with extra steps. Right?
Well, it's just we're doing it through an intermediary called Ukraine right now.
And the bodies of Ukrainian people, right? We're saying like this needs to be as long as possible in order to that your life is the means for us to accomplish a geopolitical goal, to degrade your military. What for? Not because, and they're not even making, even if you're on their side, they should be making a moral case why this is a moral war. Because a strategic, and goal to degrade their military because Russia bad isn't going to hold on to people very long.
That does not work.
I don't think it will.
You're forgetting, but also democracy good.
Yeah, right. I think when they were saying this was to defend democracy, that was a stronger case. But they've given that up now, apparently.
Well, yeah,
at least Republicans.
Ukraine's basically suspended all hopes of democracy. Right?
We now know too. Before the war, they were doing this. They banned opposition parties. They were shutting down media that was critical of them. Now we have an American reporter currently in prison, probably a work camp. Work camp. Let me say it again. Work camp. It's a work camp. It's a place where they force you to work. It's called slavery. Okay.
Sounds like a gulag.
For the crime of criticizing the Ukrainian regime.
They used to have work camps there several decades ago too. Remember that time?
Going back to the Canada story. It is so disturbing to the doublespeak in that area and how that's played out. Not to mention, teasing our story coming up, if Ukraine is the one who actually did the Nordstream pipeline, that they attacked a NATO ally. And we're going to see, huge implications to that. Like, that's supposed to be what NATO's for, is to defend a NATO ally.
Huge implications.
Wait, I want to get back to the first thing you said on here. Dana Perino was hosting a Clinton Foundation event.
Yeah.
I find that interesting because she's the former Bush press secretary,
It almost makes it seem like the uniparty's real.
It's almost, that's just kind of interesting.
It wasn't just that she was hosting it.
Go ahead.
It wasn't just that she was hosting it, is that she referred to Hillary Clinton as, what she said, like the wonderful secretary, Hillary Clinton. Like,
interesting.
And not to say she should be rude or anything like that, but that's pretty glowing words.
Well, if they pay you enough money, you're not going to be like, hey, check out this chick. And like,
yeah, Dana Perino's not going to be like, so what's with the Clinton kill list?
And it's always as someone who is associated with the Clinton Foundation couldn't ask a fair question about Ukraine that actually give him the time or capability to answer it clearly. I mean, it's just to set it up that way, it was just so silly. But I mean, typical of the mainstream press.
100%. Speaking of substance, I thought Chris Christie, well, he had one interesting thing to say, but man, his dunk on Trump was the real highlight for me, I have to say. Do we have a clip of that? I guess we may not.
What are you wanting to go to?
Well, just for the fighting words. Just going in order.
Okay, so the dunk on Trump is not this clip.
That's fine. Okay. That's fine.
Oh,
but
we got to watch that.
We really do need
but like, which one are we going to is my question.
Dude, the only dunk that matters.
This is a fucked podcast.
This really is so sideways. You're going to have to edit.
Every time something goes wrong, Kyle just goes like, God damn it, I have to edit this.
There's another 5 minutes of my life right there. It's like,
I want to watch the Donald Duck clip. I thought that was like the funniest thing that Christie had said, and I don't think that he meant for it to be funny, but everything about it was hilarious.
I think he did. I thought he was meaning it to be teasing, funny, make his point. It's a very Trumpian thing, right? It's like he's trying to Sleepy Joe.
100%. He's trying to use Trump's tricks against him.
Yeah.
But just the look on his face at the end didn't convince me that he was being funny. It looked like he was trying to like actually get a dunk on him. And well,
I don't think those are mutually exclusive, are they?
Maybe not.
Yeah, be funny while actually insulting. That's the goal.
I suppose.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just being mean. But if you're being funny while you're doing it, it's even better.
You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
Just staring down the barrel. How about them apples, bud?
He's like, we workshopped this for hours, hours in the mirror, staring it down.
The staffer in the back who wrote that is like, we're going to call you Donald. Yes, yes, yes. The whole staff just like, Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it came off the way with the power he wanted it to have. I don't think that it was.
Bring up the polling website on that one, because I think that this really demonstrates, like, did that work? Because that was by far his biggest. He did. We'll get into his AI comments, which were good, like he from a policy angle, but from an electoral angle, did he do well? So this is the over-under. Now, it's important to understand is the vertical is the pre-debate. So when you ask them how good they're going to do, are they going to do very good, poor, or terrible? And then you had the post-debate, which is the horizontal, right? So did they terrible, poor, bad? So up and to the right is where you want to be. Down and to the left is where you don't want to be, right? And you notice Ron DeSantis, he succeeded expectations. Vivek did, but not in the not afterwards. People thought he was going to do better than he actually did. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. I think that I would agree with that. I didn't think that Vivek won this debate per se. I thought Ron DeSantis definitely looked better.
Yeah.
But I think that was by virtue of the fact that everyone was just screaming down Vivek's throat whenever he got an opportunity to say anything.
Mm-hmm. It's also just the general hit pieces on Vivek. Like, everyone is going after him right now, and he's not getting a chance to explain himself, largely because everybody's talking over him when he's giving an opportunity to explain himself. So, and there's a lot of trigger words to the conservative audiences that are being used in these attack pieces, like he did business in China, right? Like all of these things, right?
Yeah. And if you notice where Christie's at, Doug and Mike Pence. Now, if you go down a little bit, Kyle, I think the real clear one is this one, where who won and lost. DeSantis won. I think most of that's baked in. He has the most amount of public national ID because of COVID. Therefore, we support. Haley kind of represents the old school conservative, neoconservative crowd and where they're at. Ramaswamy is the Trump candidate, the Trump-like candidate, the Trump new generation candidate. Diet Trump, is that right? What would I don't know.
Trump light?
Trump that's capable of doing a push-up? I don't know. Or something like that. But Chris Christie, of course, devastatingly bad. Like, that is a really bad, worst performance ratio. That means a lot of people said DeSantis was the best, Christie was the worst. And I think what that is it's very clear that the strategy for Republicans in the presidential debate cannot be to attack Trump. You have to be the person who's cultivating his supporters. Because if you attack Trump, you're part of this machine. You're part of the same prosecutorial media government complex that has been going after Trump forever. So if you want to get his voters, you have to be seen as in his camp. That's why DeSantis is so clearly trying to move the way he is in Ukraine. That's why Ramaswamy has gained the support that he has, because I think a lot of Trump supporters are saying, or want someone who doesn't have Trump's baggage, who can be a better messenger. And then you got younger voters who are like, wow, someone who probably doesn't sleep with a CPAP machine or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He probably doesn't have to wear special shoes, to worry about his gout. It's a very different thing going on with Ramaswamy.
There is something interesting about Christie where I feel like if the Trump moment never happened, like Trump never even ran for president, let alone became president, I feel like Christie could be the nominee at this point in time for president. I feel like he's somebody that Republicans would have gotten behind if Trump didn't completely divert the party into a different direction. Like it feels to me that Christie would have very likely been a candidate. Like he's got the bravado that I think the general Republican audience really likes, but it's just like he's part of a previous time where ideologically the average Republican's just not at that point anymore.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, like the interventionism of Christie is just never going to play with that crowd, and he knows that. So I think Christie's real goal here is just to get DeSantis's voters onto him.
Yeah.
He's not. He's only attacking Trump in order to look like the stronger anti-Trump Republican, which is an incredibly dumb strategy in my opinion, because the overall public Republican vote support on Trump is still enormous, and it goes up every time they indict him, 60%. So the strategy from there has to pivot somewhere, and I just don't see where he's going with it. And of course, Pence, I can't really explain why Pence does so badly on every one of these.
He sucks the air out of the room every time he talks. Like there's this awkward quiet that comes in. He's just like, he gets everybody like down onto a very low level, and then he meanders through some sort of a story, and it's just like, oh, it's very cringe. It's like old school politician-y stuff in like a new age where it just feels cringe.
It is. He has kind of a Clinton vibe to me, but without the like charisma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of just like slow and
His
quiet
mannerisms are very Bill Clinton.
and kind of
the way
stoic
that he does it,
in a way.
Southern, is it the Southern thing? Like
could
it's
be.
like a Southern church kind of
Yeah.
way of speaking, and it doesn't. And it would work. I think it would have worked during the Bush era,
Yeah.
but I just don't think it works right now.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, because it doesn't have neither of Vivek's energy, nor does it have like Trump's like humor and charisma. Right? Like Reagan ran on charisma and humor.
Totally.
Right. And I think that's still the fundamental like way to ingratiate yourselves to conservatives.
I think that to Steelman maybe his approach, you could view his demeanor as sort of like relaxed, confident. Like that's what he's trying to put forward, is like some like presidential energy to contrast maybe like some of the frenetic energy that's out there, particularly with all the shouting and stuff going on. I mean, Doug Burgum, I thought had some really interesting and quality points, but he's just so frantic to get the most out of his airtime that he sounds a little anxiety inducing.
Desperate.
Bro, if you only have 30 seconds to make your entire campaign pitch.
I know,
Like,
I know. It's rough, but I mean,
poor guy. But he needs to build his base outside the debate stage. Debate stages are a way to differentiate yourself from other candidates. They aren't a way to build support. Donald Trump didn't build his support on the debate stage, although he had some very important debate moments. What got him his support was his earned media, his constant state of getting other people to talk about him. That's how Vivek has gone from a nobody to the third place runner.
yeah.
Outside of Trump. So fourth place runner, really.
Third place runner with Trump. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because DeSantis would be number 2.
DeSantis.
Vivek. Halo.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's also a clear element too of like, I feel like guys like DeSantis and Burgum, they're people that the average candidate or the average Republican voter would really like to have as their governor, but not their president. Like, and there's a certain energy that's needed for the presidency, because at the end of the day, the president is just a spokesperson. Like, that's really what their role is. They're to be like a face, and people want like a very good face to be the person. And there's so like the personality really does matter. Like that's all it really is. Like it doesn't even really matter your executive prowess as you were in governor. Like that really matters for a governor. It matters less so for the presidency.
I would push back on that a little bit and say I think there's more to that people expect of the president than just a figurehead in terms of a face. I think the president being the CEO of the country like has to be a visionary and has to have a direction. He has to be able to rally people behind his mission, right? That is starkly contrasted with the ability to be a good executor of plans, right? A real good like governor in that sense. So I think Burgum and DeSantis have that side, but they don't have the visionary side. But Ramaswamy is coming in with this vision for like reuniting America, talking about this new narrative, this new story about what we're all about, and I think that is capturing people also.
Well, and that's what 2016 was too, right? With the whole MAGA movement was a vision of America's a certain way right now. I'm going to get America to a better place, right? And there's a kind of a callback to make America great again, because we used to be awesome, but everybody feels like we're degrading. And so here's the vision of moving forward. And unfortunately, a lot of the Trump movement is just like, I'm just going to fire them all, but like it didn't really pan out, right?
And that's the executive experience question, right? He thought he could run it like a business, and everyone was just going to like follow him because they're the employees. But that's not how it works, right? And that's the executive's decision, but that's also your state agencies don't have the same rules your federal agencies do, right? So like, I think having a clear case of how you're going to take on the deep state is more important than just saying, oh, I'm going to say the Republican thing, which is I'm going to take on the deep state. But policy does matter. For example, we have the issue on artificial intelligence right now. And, we've been talking about how this is the next frontier of regulation questions, because AI is going to so substantially change the way labor markets work, the way, production works, the way everything works. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to treat it like the internet, where we're going to encourage innovation, or are we going to crack down on it and make sure that it can't eliminate any jobs, right? or whatever, panic, worried about, Terminator type questions. Chris Christie, and one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this is because I didn't want to come across like all the other candidates have no good ideas. Chris Christie actually did an excellent job with this particular clip.
I wanted to follow up on this because 22% of American workers fear their jobs will be lost to a robot. And you said in the past that the free market is the way to go. Would you retrain workers who lose a job to artificial intelligence, and to do what?
Well, look, what I think artificial intelligence offers us is an extraordinary opportunity to expand well beyond the productivity that we have now, and to have Americans be able to be involved in that revolution, Dana. Each time we have shown incredible innovation and progress in this country. What we've done with it is to expand all kinds of new, even unthought of opportunities for folks. Yes, we have to do retraining for folks who lose some of their jobs, and we should be doing that. And we should have more training available both at the county college level and the local level for people to be able to access it. So yes, I would be in favor of that. But this is a much bigger issue than that. We can't be afraid of innovation. America has been the great innovator of this world over the last 250 years, a technological innovator, a manufacturing innovator, and a freedom and governmental innovator. And that's why America has to continue to stand strong in the world, pro-innovation, pro-progress. And I will tell you this, as President of the United States, what I will do is to make sure that every innovator in this country gets the government the hell off its back and out of its pocket so that it can innovate and bring great new inventions to our country that will make everybody's lives better.
Mr.
Dude, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Gobble, gobble.
Oh, man. By the way, I can't remember who said this. It was in one of my group chats. Someone was like, if Trump passes up the opportunity to fire back and call him Krispy Kreme, it's a missed opportunity. And boy, would it be a missed opportunity.
But he's right. The only way he could have answered that question better if I was his debate prep team would be to say, you must mention China. And the reason why we don't want to regulate AI is because if we don't have a hands-off innovation approach to AI, China will overtake us in AI development. And then where's all of the AI development going to happen? It's going to be in China. So the concern about jobs is dumb because they don't know anything about economics at Fox Business, apparently, because this is supposedly a finance channel, but you don't know that the candle makers losing their jobs to light bulbs didn't mean more unemployment. What created more unemployment was minimum wage and unionizing and things like that. But the Chris Christie answer there was exactly right. And I applaud him for actually taking the brave stance there, because what he could have done is the populist thing. He could have got out there and said, like, absolutely, we got to crack down all this scary AI stuff, because that would appeal to boomers more, frankly.
Totally.
But he gave the right answer.
He's getting pretty big donations from tech, too, so I think that there's some of that's involved. But Christie's comments here, I actually think that this might be one of the reasons why Christie's did poorly in the debate, though, because I think that this is a very big problem, is that a lot of the voter base in general are very Luddites on the new technology that's coming because of the jobs issue. Yeah. So like this could be one of the things that are actually a negative against him in the public light. But although I agree, like people shouldn't be Luddites about new technology. New technology is going to get us through all of these challenges that we have going forward. And to what you said there about he should have mentioned China, I think that's completely correct, because like I talk with folks over in East Asia on the tech side like every day, and some of the new innovations that are coming out of like China, Japan, Malaysia, India right now, it is incredible. And it seems every day, it seems like there's like a new thing that's coming forward in America right now of like the bureaucracy here that's trying to crack down on AI, crack down on crypto, crack down on all these important industries that are coming up right now. And it's like we need some sort of solid regulatory clarity here in the country. Otherwise, it's just like everybody's going to be moving offshores. Everybody, because it's very unclear on what's possible and what innovators can do right now in this country. So yeah, props to Christie on that. Even though I dislike the man, props to him.
You have to separate the strategic from the policy. That's true, and you got to separate like the strategy from the person's innate charisma. Right, and I think we kind of think of three big buckets, and each candidate's kind of navigating across those. But the candidate who does best across all three of those, according to Joe, is obviously Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, according to me. Oh, wow.
Hey, you accuse me of being a fanboy.
Well, you know, we showered him with a lot of praise in that one episode, and
that's because he killed it. He did kill it. He did so good.
He did kill it.
After watching this one, you realize how much better he did in the last one because he had like the best. Like I can still remember things from that first debate, you know, but I don't remember anything from him on this debate, really, other than the transgender thing.
Well, there was the one thing that did come up that I thought he really nailed, and that was when he was attacked for speaking to Gen Z and speaking to the younger generation by engaging on TikTok, you know, with this fear-mongering idea that like TikTok is this, you know, Chinese spy app that's, you know, banned on government devices and this sort of thing. They sort of tried to pin him for, you know, somehow working with China or something like that because he was using TikTok. And then he got, you know, a lot of support from, you know, the millennial generation and Gen Z for actually engaging. And I think he had a great answer to that as well, if we want to.
Before we jump into the video too, I also want to comment, because we were talking about this prior, of Jake Paul, who's big, you know, millennial Gen Z influencer, right?
Not just big,
boxer and stuff.
Enormous.
Huge,
yes.
He tweeted out that he wants to help out the outsider candidates, being both Vivek Ramaswamy in the GOP and RFK in the Democrat, on helping them with their social media outreach to young people. So it is interesting to see figures like that are kind of jumping on board these outsider candidates, because, and I also think it shows like the youth are kind of not with these older, polished politician-y candidates. Like the youth seems to be wanting these outsider candidates too. So
I see that, definitely. I mean, maybe it's just the fact that we want somebody who is a little more vital, right? And not standing up there having complete, you know, brain lapses in front of a microphone, or, you know, making votes but having to be told, you know, rest in peace, Dianne Feinstein, to vote the right way, right? Maybe it's just that we want somebody who's actually a little bit relatable, right?
Yeah.
Ramaswamy. TikTok is banned on government-issued devices because of its ties to the Chinese government. Yet you joined TikTok after dinner with boxer and influencer Jake Paul. Should the commander-in-chief be so easily persuaded by an influencer?
So the answer is I have a radical idea for the Republican Party. We need to win elections. And part of how we win elections is reaching the next generation of young Americans where they are. So when I get into office, I've been very clear. Kids under the age of 16 should not be using addictive social media. We're only going to ever get to declaring independence from China, which I favor, if we actually win. So while the Democrats are running rampant, reaching the next generation 3-1, there's exactly one person in the Republican Party which talks a big game about reaching young people, and that's me. And let me level with all of you. I'm the new guy here, and so I know I have to earn your trust. What do you see? You see a young man who's in a bit of a hurry, maybe a little ambitious, bit of a know-it-all, it seems at times. I'm here to tell you, no, I don't know it all. I will listen. I will have the best people, the best and brightest in this country, whatever age they are, advising me. We will be probably many of the people on this stage included. That's how I built my companies. I want to be challenged. I want people who disagree with me. That's what makes America great, because we're not a perfect nation. We're founded on the pursuit of perfection. That is what makes America great. And that is why we will end it once we win this election.
How do you deal with that criticism that's implied in the question? Like, oh, you're young and influenceable by Jake Paul's. Like, no, bro, Vivek has far more money than Jake Paul does, to be clear. Like, and he was not more famous, but more wealthy at a younger age and more successful on every single measure when he was Jake Paul's age. So why would he be influenced by it? No, of course, what it is the setup. This is a question meant to set up, oh, you're young and influenceable. right? And he's like, no, you're being ridiculous. Maybe we should reach out to the people. All these boomers up here are going to be on here saying, oh my God, the next generation, they're socialists, and then do nothing to reach out to them and don't support people who do. There's a tremendous amount of people who are every day working, including us, working to reach out to everyday people to help them understand America, what makes countries successful, all these principles that we talk about on this podcast as we explain the news. That's how you do that. You don't do that by just criticizing them from a distance and then banning the app for adults to use.
If you are a small business owner looking for exponential growth, you have to connect with Adam Thune at Intellectual Patriots. He will revolutionize your business game and help you get to the next level. Adam can streamline your business practices and advertising strategies to improve your bottom line. His expertise in data engineering means he can build you the systems you need to collect and analyze market data. His mission is to provide you with invaluable insights to fuel your success. From grant writing and business proposals to digital systems integrations, even AI management. Intellectual Patriots is a one-stop shop for cutting-edge solutions. Don't wait another second. Visit intelpatriots.com to learn more. That's INTEL patriots.com. I don't know that I agree with Ramaswamy on the fact that kids under 16 should be banned from using it. How do you feel about that, Kyle?
I'm skeptical of state intervention always, but also, I do think that there's something to the psychological argument on these social media apps. I think 16 is probably too late, and I think there's a few sociological reasons on why that's probably it. Like I would say, if just practically speaking, if there was to be some sort of ban on social media use for youth, like in the same way that we do something like alcohol and stuff like that, I would probably say it's probably more like entrance into high school is when it would probably be best, because I feel like there'd be this weird gap where you have like some kids in high school that are able to have social media and then some kids aren't. But it's like when you're moving into high school, there's this you're moving into a new social structure, and there's probably like lessons to be learned from social media, and it's probably useful for like schools to teach proper social media use. And like in the same way that you would have a computer class in high school, like I actually feel like social media is probably better suited in that type of a way. I was like, here's good practices. Here's the things that you should be wary of. But it's also like, this is really good for like marketing and entrepreneurship. Like I think kids at a young age, like you have kids that are starting businesses in high school right now, and and they're doing it through social media. Like that's a very important thing. Like there's good and bad that exists here. So it's like proper training almost. That's important. That's probably like a high school function.
I think if you look at Jonathan Haidt's work in this space and the coddling of the American mind, the effects, specifically amongst girls, of social media use and self-harm and self-deletion, that there is a problem here that is substantial. And, I think if you have a government that exists to protect people's rights, specifically the rights of minors, and the perverse effects of the existence of social media for those people, like meaning the network effects. Like if you're a parent of a kid who isn't on social media, the amount of pressure that kid has to get on social media, how the government could play a role in short-circuiting that until a certain point where we can negotiate that. I am open to that idea, depending on execution, depending on how they go about it. I've always felt like the internet is the sort of thing that can be, before I had kids, I always felt like the internet is just what it is, right? It's just a very dangerous place. I grew up in the 90s internet, which was far more dangerous, right, than it is today, right? Right now it's very cultivated and walled gardens, right? Mm-hmm. That parents have the primary responsibility to protect their kids from what they could see on the internet, right? And the start needs to be there, but I don't think we should immediately write off any amount of state intervention, if only because of the perverse effects that we currently experience with this sort of situation. And I'd actually really want to agree with you on that one, Kyle, too, that there's a certain amount of like, our education system is so static and unable to adjust to new realities, even as there's all this body of evidence suggesting that social media is really bad for kids at a young age, that the schools just have no way of really adapting to help confront this because it's all provided by the government. So, more flexibility for teachers and schools to respond to this would be another angle for the policy response that I would like to see someone like Vivek advocate for.
I almost feel like some of these social media companies, it'd be an interesting like entrepreneurial take on this, or like an entrepreneur to come out of like having some sort of like school social media program that like allows kids to interact with each other. It's kind of like, there's like almost like an everything app for schools. And then it's like, there's like an interactivity that can be had with teachers, and it can be like a part of the schooling process. Like, I feel like that's where we need to move right now, but it doesn't seem like there's any like clear. I'd actually be curious to talk with your brother Russell about this, and like maybe there's some sort of like,
That's a good question. Yeah.
a function, because your brother's a teacher.
He's been on a podcast before. You should check out the interview. Yeah, totally. I think I don't think there's a moral way to do it, but walking in the space of that the government plays a role. If you're accepting that first premise, I think it flows from there. That the protection of kids, the amount of evidence that social media is destructive is so substantial, then I think you could make that case, and I think you could do so with a reasonably consistent basis.
Well, and one of the reasons why I say I think 16 is probably too late, and it's because you're moving into a new social structure when you enter high school, is like I actually feel like there's like a kind of a bullying point that exists there of like the older kids being able to bully the younger kids because they have the social media and then the younger kids don't. Yeah. And that's why I feel like it's like upon entering this new social structure, there's like a learning aspect that comes with the social media.
I think the data though is it really, if you're just going by the Jonathan Haidt thesis, it should be like 18 to 21, to be clear. Like, we should ban social media for people under the age of 20.
Yeah, but it's one of those things too, is like I know a 16-year-old that makes $100,000 a year off of social media.
Right.
And you're like
banning it for him would be wrong.
Yeah, there's a certain fostering entrepreneurship
that
that exists there too that I like and appreciate.
And the role of the parent, right? At the end of the day, the real sovereign question here is what role do parents have in making this distinction? And then second to that, what role can government play to reduce the amount of unintended consequences of this technology that hurt kids?
Yeah.
And I think 16 is the right age, personally. I mean, I would say 16 to 17, personally.
Yeah, I worry about unintended consequences inside of high schools of having basically half of students being able to use social media, and other half not.
But that's why the ban actually is a good thing, right? In the sense of like disrupting that network effect, because you can't because it's illegal is a very different question than you can't because your parents are lame.
Yeah, but I'm just imagining this right now is like now you have bullying that's happening of younger kids. For instance, this would just be like one type of example of this. You have bullying that's happening of younger kids spreading on social media that there's literally no fight back mechanism that exists right there. And especially because I was in a small school and I was friends with like everyone in high school throughout like my freshman through senior year. I was kind of like, and so like from the age of like 14 to 18, you had people that were like mixing it up, right? And it like to be able to have, it might be different at a bigger school where everybody's kind of just within their grade, but like at a smaller school, you'd have like half not, but everybody kind of interacts with each other. It'd be very awkward.
And don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Kids will find a way around a government ban.
That's completely true. That's completely true.
Like to act like it's actually going to work it's only going to work amongst a certain amount of cases and situations.
I need to jump in here. I really enjoy listening to that, but I have to say I am surprised that you guys favor government intervention.
I'm not saying I favor a government intervention. Like I'm operating with this is actually an important clarification on the podcast in general. I'm often there's like my ideal thing of like, I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in government, but we are operating in a current state and paradigm where we do have the government that is existing right now. And like, there is that apparatus. Like I'm kind of saying like, if this were to be the case, like this is probably how I would approach it. Yeah. Right.
I'm just saying, if you start with the premise that government plays a role in protecting minors, I don't see why you would say this. Now, if you're saying I'm an anarchist and I don't think government plays a role protecting minors, then yeah, you can be very consistent and say they shouldn't do this. But I don't know if have you read Coddling American Mind?
I have not.
Yeah. I mean, like it's a lot. I mean, the sheer amount of the case and how much data there is about the negative effects of this is.
And I don't dispute that at all, but I think I would put more right and responsibility in the family court, right? Not just to set boundaries and parameters for what is acceptable in terms of social media use at what age, but also in terms of setting cultural norms. Like, I think we need to put a little bit more responsibility back on the communities to establish that, like, maybe social media for kids isn't right, not because the government says it's illegal, but because families have decided collectively in a communal space that that's not the kind of world we want our kids to grow up in. Yeah. And that's a lot of responsibility. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen overnight. More than likely, you're going to see things happen governmentally, right? Either municipal level, state level, for example, with Montana banning TikTok as of next year, assuming that doesn't get challenged. But I would wonder, would something like that just immediately get challenged on constitutional grounds and be overturned?
Yeah, but I think the TikTok banning in Montana will be challenged because it's so narrowly written. It just bans TikTok. It doesn't ban social media, which is very different.
But how do you not say that?
And how do you differentiate
freedom of speech?
TikTok, which is a video app, and YouTube?
Well, right. And how do you say
strange?
How do you make a free speech argument around just TikTok, but not around all of social media?
Children don't have freedom of speech, to be clear. Like they don't have any rights in our constitutional
in our
government.
paradigm. That's the case.
In Locke, they don't have rights. Right? It's freely acting adults who are completely
who has the right to exercise dominion over children?
Their parents.
Okay, so then that's who the responsibility should be carried.
Right. So, and all I'm saying is, I actually agree with that. Right. I mean, I think at the ideal circumstances, we have no government, and we have the prosperity that comes from that, or a night watchman government that only exists to protect our individual rights. The question is what is individual rights, right? And at what point do those individual rights mean protecting children from predatory adults?
Sure.
And what does that mean for social media, right? And then it gets very into then the government has a place that can get in there that you can justify on a night watchman state. And secondarily, that for example, it's much like our discussion that we had about transgenders rights for children and for example, religious rights. So parents have the dominion over the kid. The parents that say we don't believe in medicine, we're going to pray the disease away and allow the kid to die, are they liable when there was a preventable medicine that could have saved that kid's life? Is there force that you would be willing to endorse someone to use to stop that from happening? I think there's a lot of people who say, yeah. I think a lot of people would raise their hand and be like, I'll go save that kid. Similarly, on the trans issue, if you believe that is just medical, castration and it's terrible for kids and it's just going to, it's all negative. There's very little upside, all that kind of stuff. As actually Vivek says, it's a mental disorder that you're feeding into rather than helping them try to solve. Then you're at a situation where it's like, I would be willing to use force to stop that parent from doing that. I think the state should. Perhaps social media exists in that sphere. Just opening the door there. If you're familiar with just how devastatingly bad, because the amount of suicide amongst teen girls right now is scary.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, I've seen those statistics, and I don't disagree that I think social media is bad for kids. Frankly, I think it's bad for adults. I mean, and the effects of social media, it's been shown to have, similar dopaminergic effects as sugar and heroin and all these other, extremely addictive substances that exist in society. And so I think there's a broader conversation around how do we, in a healthy way, manage the risks of such technology that we're currently living with, while also not limiting the potential opportunity that exists there. But I would personally say that it's a cultural issue that needs to be bottom up, not imposed top down. But of course, I think that's where the debate lies. And I do commend Vivek for coming out and at least establishing a stance on that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I guess we'll have to see where the debate goes, but I certainly did not like to go back to this debate moment when Nikki Haley said that listening to objectively the smartest guy on the debate stage made her feel dumber.
Yeah, let's jump into that here. But to wrap a little bow on my thoughts on this too, on the stuff, and this kind of goes into the AI conversation with Christy too, of if I was a young person right now. Sorry.
You are a young person right now.
if I was a younger person, if I was a Gen Z a Gen Z person right now, I would be studying all of the new technology. I would be studying social media and how to use it effectively and to the maximum effect possible of how to, because we're moving into this information attention economy right now. I would be learning how to effectively use social media, effectively use AI, and effectively use crypto right now. And you will be far more superior than everybody around you right now. And regardless of these conversations of banning this or the banning that, like that is where you should be thinking right now if you are a young person, because that is where all the opportunity is going to lie going forward, in my opinion. So, yeah, as you were saying, Joe, let's play the rest of this, a little interaction here, because Nikki Haley goes at Vivek.
Sorry, Ramaswamy was speaking.
There's one person on this.
This is infuriating because TikTok is one of the most dangerous social media apps that we could have. And what you've got, I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say, because I can't believe they hear about a TikTok situation. What they're doing is these 150 million people are on TikTok. That means they can get your contacts, they can get your financial information, they can get your emails, they can get text messages, they can get all of these things.
This is very important for our party.
Exactly what they're doing.
This is very important for our party, and I'm going to say
you've gone and you've helped China make medicines in China, not America. You're now wanting kids to go and get on the social media that's dangerous for all of us. You were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you. We can't trust you. We can't have TikTok in our kids' lives.
This is very important.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you have 15 seconds.
I think, excuse me.
You have 15 seconds, Mr. Ramaswamy.
Me, this guy, me.
I think we would be better served as a Republican Party if we're not sitting here hurling personal insults and actually have a legitimate debate about policy following Reagan's 11th Commandment in his honor. And the answer is that is what actually makes our country strong. And I believe in these people. These are good people.
That's enough of that. Like that really encapsulates, I think, what the entire debate was.
Exactly.
Everybody shouting over top of Vivek.
And the after effects. Guess who they found on TikTok doing lots of TikTok dances?
Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley's daughter.
Damn.
Her kids. Right. So just like I said, like I could see why there's some argument for TikTok banning amongst youth and stuff like that. If you're going to make a case there, okay, fine. But it is way more hypocritical if your daughter is on it while you're saying, a presidential candidate who is literally using it as a business to reach out for his candidacy and cultivate a new generation of voters. He shouldn't be, but your daughter gets to be. Come on, lady.
Seriously.
Like, exercise your domain of influence more responsibly.
Precisely. And I think that perfectly illustrates the problem of expecting government to do things that parents aren't first expected to do in their own household. That's all I'm saying. I think we should move on to the Nordstream story. We've done a lot of coverage of the debate here. Do you guys want to stick around on this?
We got one more. We got to introduce you to our
It's a little bit of a meme first. We got a meme and then we'll move it on.
Because it didn't catch on, and we're going to make this meme catch on.
I don't know. I was watching the debate on my second monitor, and I turned over when Chris Christie got asked this question right here, and I burst out laughing. Because I don't know, something about his face in this moment. If you're watching on audio, you might not get the entire picture of it, but the video just felt juicy to me. I don't know why.
China's the real enemy.
Governor Christie, President Biden's first 2 years have brought China, Russia, and Iran closer together. Are we focused too much on Ukraine and not enough on this threat from the New World Order?
No, they're all connected, Stuart. They're all connected. The Chinese are paying for the Russian war in Ukraine.
That's it. We don't need to watch this
supplying
stupid
more
answer.
sophisticated weapons, and so are the North Koreans now as well, with the encouragement of the Chinese. The naivete on this stage.
I think it's important to get he's like they're all connected. It's the Chinese and the North Koreans. Like it just feels like that. It's always sunny meme where he's like with the whiteboard. They're all connected, Stuart.
This New World Order. They're all connected, Steve.
I don't know why. I just burst out laughing when I saw that. It was so funny.
Man, that's good.
I super expected him to be like, they're turning the frogs gay. First of all,
he's like, first it's the AstraZeneca in the water, and and then it comes in with the North Koreans and Kim Il-sung and
Chris Alex Jones Christie is my new favorite meme. We need to make that happen.
Yes.
All right. So if you're a long-term listener, you've heard us cover the Nord Stream pipeline from the beginning, but it has yet to really sink into the American public. You have Seymour Hersh's explanation, which is the Americans did it. We have a new research that's come out, and there was a news story from Der Spiegel happened this week on the 1-year anniversary from the destruction of it. And I do want to note that you have to remember about how many people after this happened immediately blamed the Russians. And I want to note that propaganda has a meaning. It's not just a word that floats out there that says speech I don't like. Propaganda has a meaning, which is speech that is specifically meant to manipulate people for your political interest or gain, or to harm someone else's. And this, like, Heritage is a great one. Heritage's explanation for why Russia attacked their own pipeline, their own leverage to reduce Germany's impact on the war, as, quote, to strike fear into the West. Think about it. It's like being in a gunfight, and a guy literally takes his pistol, shoots himself in the foot to make you afraid.
Make me afraid for his mental stability, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it is so torturous to try to get there with that piece of logic. This is now obviously rank warmongering and nowhere close to the fact. Like, we have no, at 1 year out, we have no real alternative narrative other than two. The U.S. did it, and what Der Spiegel came out with this week with a kind of summary report. We've had some tricklings in the meantime. We haven't really talked about them. They've been like the Andromeda and stuff like that. But they came out like a very systematic report with all of the evidence that they are currently public with. There is more evidence out there that the intelligence agencies of both the Nordic states as well as Germany have said that they have and they're working on. But this is what Der Spiegel, which is a newspaper in Germany, and what they've put out with their broadcaster partner ZDF. More than 24 journalists for the last year. Here's the story, and I do recommend people actually read the thing, and maybe we'll make a short of this or like an explainer video of this, because it is like a spy novel, guys. It's like very twisty-turny, and so I'm going to try to give you a good example of what they have and what the evidentiary basis of this, so that you can make up your own mind about it, and then let's discuss. So, 6 suspects, 5 dudes and a gal, charter a boat called the Andromeda. It's a yacht rented from a company called Mola Yachting in Dransk, Germany, which is on the far...
I think it's just yachting.
Yachting.
Yeah.
Mola Yachting.
Yachting, yes.
Yeah. Did I say it wrong?
No T. Silent
Yachting. T. Oh, yeah. See, I was getting my German on. Like,
yeah.
Like, I gotta put a German. I gotta put a German twist
Germany,
on this.
On the Baltic Sea. Okay, so there's a lot of physical evidence here. So octogen is the likely explosive. There's only a couple underwater explosives. Octogen is one of the most commonly used. Was detected on the yacht, the Andromeda. The charter fee that you have to pay was paid for by a Warsaw, that's Warsaw, Poland, travel agency, a company that has no website or telephone number. I'm not even pronounce the travel agency.
Yeah, I wouldn't try either.
Ferrier. Yeah. According to the Polish Commercial Registry, right? So think of the chain here. Andromeda, the boat was rented out at the time, right? A couple weeks before and a few days after the suspected time around Baltrops. The investigators go there. They discover the residue. They say, okay, what's all the records you have of this rental? They say, oh, it was this, travel agency that paid for it. They go look up that travel agency. It's registered in Poland under a woman named Natalia A., a 54-year-old woman who lives in Kyiv, Ukraine. She has a Ukrainian phone number attached to it. And that Ukrainian phone number, when you call it, a woman answered, but then refused to talk to anybody and hung up. And then later, a Ukrainian officer called that reporter back and threatened to charge them with stalking.
Wow.
Yeah. So they have no physical location in Warsaw, Poland. And this lady isn't trained as she has training, according to public records, in a completely unrelated field to this. Now, the passport they use, because when you rent a yacht, you also have to give them an ID. The passport is named Stefan Marcu, a man from Moldova. Moldova is a small country in Eastern Europe. But the passport number belonged to his old Romanian passport that he had from another trip that he did that's now expired back in October of 2019. So someone took his old passport number, put a new picture on it, and used his name to rent this yacht. Right? So the more you go, the more like this feels like spy stuff, right? Yes. The picture of the guy on it is not 60 years old, which is how old Stefan Marcu is, because the reporters actually tracked down this guy. It's a 20-year-old military haircut looking dude.
So the photo on the passport is not even the same guy?
Yeah, not of Stefanik, right? Because you couldn't do that, right? Because if I give you a fake passport but it doesn't look like me, you're not going to believe it's a fake passport, right?
Right.
So they took all of his information and like the number and the look of the passport, and they just replaced the photo with a different guy. So the guy they're able to track down, they don't actually say how, but I mean, facial recognition software perhaps or something like that, is Valery K., who is from the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, something like that. He apparently serves in the 93rd Mechanized Brigade in the Ukrainian Army. That's because of public records. We know that. So the media talked to his parents, talked to his ex-girlfriend, all this stuff. The guy is completely missing. No one can find him. They couldn't find him. They tested DNA of his relatives to what the DNA they found on the yacht. No match. So they don't have, it's not like someone could have looked kind of like him and then taken his picture offline and put it on. That's very possible. The connection is not a closed, is like smoking gun, but this is like a lot of investigation when you think about it. So we do have evidence of its various different stops, stopped by Poland. Physical evidence raised concerns by Polish customs and immigration officials, like he was when he was traveling with this. And they have like the physical evidence of him being stopped there, so it's probably was him. The current case is that they get on this boat, they use consumer level sonar to detect where this pipeline is, go out there. One of the parts that's very interesting about him is that Valery is part of a youth organization called VGO Sokil, which offers young men training in riflemanship and diving.
It's an interesting combination of things.
Yeah.
Why?
Youth organization, probably has some nationalist ties. It's kind of like a Hitler Youth situation. I'm just gonna say it. I mean, like and that wouldn't be untypical in Ukraine, guys. So like this, Ukraine has a very twisted, long story.
Work camps and Hitler Youth program. Those are the things that go on there,
Oh
right?
man, yeah, it's complicated. If you're dealing in the truth around Ukraine, it's hard to escape the Nazi parallels, right? Because it's just everywhere.
Well, clearly, I mean, Justin Trudeau just hosted one.
Yeah.
Without knowing it,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah. So the cases, they go out there, they plant the bombs. The bombs are the steel pipes is another one. There's like thousands of these chained together steel pipes and like 4 total pipes that actually make up Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. All the little sections of that are about 11 centimeters of concrete and 4 centimeters of steel, which is a pretty substantial explosion to get through that, right? But
For sure.
and then they have welded seams on the inside, and 2 of the 4 are planted on the seams.
How do you know?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So the pipe sections are covered in concrete. You can't see the seam, the weld seam in the steel from the outside.
Yeah.
So how do you know it's there?
That's a great question. I think that really undermines the case that the sonar or the tools weren't more sophisticated.
Yeah.
But you basically have 4 explosions. One goes, interesting about this, one goes off at 2 a.m. and the rest go off at 7 p.m. that evening. One is kind of the one that goes off, it's kind of in 2 different sections. Nord Stream 2 was in a section, Nord Stream 1 was in 2 different sections. They both go off, but the third all go off at the same time. The site D, which is Nord Stream 2 pipe B, was a detonation only and only had like a small leak. So there was an error too, which kind of suggests like the amateurness of this, right? But we now know that one of the pipes still kind of works, even though it does leak.
Oh, really? So
Yes.
they're still actually able to pass gas through
It's been turned off since before the war, so no one's tried. But the other ones were literally
like
blown
exploded.
apart, right? And some of that is like the pressure buildup. Like as soon as, because remember that like you have a flammable methane liquid next to an explosion underwater, it's going to have a very and under pressure to create the pressure to move the air. So the oxygen explosions could be relatively small, right? They estimate 8 to 12 kilograms only to make these explosions happen. The rest is all done by the pipes being torn open by the pressure.
Oh, sure.
And then not to mention the explosive material that's underwater when it explodes is going to create all kinds of crazy stuff.
Definitely.
So we now know a lot more about this. We also know that the Germans were warned about it, and the CIA. The Germans didn't take it seriously because the warning said, hey, this is going to happen soon. and around Baltrops, and Baltrops was ending right when they said it, and it never happened. So the Germans kind of said like, oh, well, it didn't happen apparently. At least that's the current excuse. The CIA, who heard from the Dutch, basically, according to Der Spiegel, tried to persuade Ukraine not to do it. I don't know how they know that, but that's what Der Spiegel claims. So while they simultaneously say Zelensky didn't know, so who the heck were they trying to tell Ukraine not to do it? So there's a couple of really disturbing questions out of this. If Ukraine knew about it, he lied about it afterwards, which is we're now partnered with a liar who's willing to lie to the public. Not a surprise to us in the room, but to the general public, that's very important information. Second, if he didn't know, that means someone else in Ukrainian military was acting without his knowledge, which Der Spiegel says isn't uncommon in international espionage. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is how do you have accountability to supposedly your system of democracy if you can't? If you don't have to tell the president that you're assassinating someone or blowing up an ally's pipeline, then are you a democracy? No, you're not, obviously. You're something else.
Well, I think this goes into a lot like this happens frequently. Like we've talked a lot about the Trump situations, right? Where he just clearly didn't know what was going on with his own, like Pentagon was lying to him about troop movements, all this stuff. Like people got to realize that the president doesn't actually know everything that's happening. It doesn't matter what country you're in. This is always going to be the case. And this is exactly how you do espionage, is that there's certain people with certain clearances that get in the know about things. And right, like that's important to do.
And what that suggests is that democracy is a giant illusion.
Yeah.
Democracy everywhere or just in Ukraine?
No,
Ukraine,
it's a magic word.
America,
right?
Maybe not in Switzerland. I don't know. I'm just saying is that if you have a system that allows for your spy agencies to blow up mutually defense NATO countries, whether it's the United States doing it or the Ukrainian military doing it without any democratic check at all, then you're no longer abiding by the fundamental commitment of popular sovereignty that you're guaranteed in your high school history class. When you're taught about what our country is, the assumption that everyone is basing about their country, about who we are supposed to be, if that's all a big lie, people ought to know that. And we operate with this religious commitment to it. And when the people who are supposedly the ones who believe in it and actually operate on it, it's a big joke to them. If it's Biden, according to Seymour Hersh, it's a big joke, right? He actually controlled and decided that. If it was someone in the CIA without his knowledge, that would also be a disaster. And it's the same story in Ukraine. If Zelensky knew, then he is responsible for attacking our ally, Germany. If he didn't know, then someone in his military is, and he doesn't have control over his own military, which is also a disturbing question.
Well, and it seems like there's a lot of different factions at play here. Like I'm getting very early Al-Qaeda vibes from this whole story right now. I'm getting very Al-Qaeda vibes from this.
Mm. Well, you mentioned that if Ukraine did it, it would be an attack on a NATO ally. But that doesn't matter to Ukraine because they're not in NATO. But it should matter to the United States because we're in NATO.
Yeah, which
would mean that we should be attacking Ukraine or at least defending Germany from Ukraine. Instead, we're defending Ukraine.
Which kind of shows just how absurd the entire alliance system is in a sense too, because we're like, oh, if we put Ukraine in NATO, it means that they would be protected by the American security umbrella, unless we decide just not to.
Right.
Which is
like Germany should be protected,
which shows you how much we are an empire, not just a country out here just trying to do our best, this weird thing that we believe about our country in our foreign policy, which is like everyone just doesn't like us because we're free and we don't really understand why, when we're the guy, if this was high school, we'd be the guy who's like constantly stuffing the nerds into the toilet because they don't follow the rules.
And just be like, why don't they like me?
Yeah. Everyone likes me. It's like, no, you just have the Porsche in school and you just like throw the best parties. That's why people like you, but they don't actually likes you. You're just a jerk.
Well, and that's exactly the way to look at it. Like the way that I always frame it is that America is the cultural center of the Western Empire. Like it's much broader than just the United States. Like it's this much bigger Leviathan. It's just America's the cultural center of it all.
And the military center. I mean, we have 800 bases all over the world. The largest military budget, orders of magnitude more than everybody else. I mean, we spend more on military than the next 24 countries combined. 24 of the largest countries in the world with the biggest military budgets in the world. 24 of them, all stacked up, and they're just starting to compete with us.
Well, it's just like all of NATO is just United States extended.
Yeah,
right?
and then that's not that. And the figures I'm saying aren't including NATO numbers, right? So once you include that, the supposed mutual defense clause is supposed to say that you attack us, it's like attacking Germany is the same as attacking Georgia. Now think about it for a moment. If there's a pipeline to Georgia and Ukraine didn't want the pipeline to influence us or our elections, what does it mean for our commitment to NATO if we're willing to let a non-NATO member attack us, to attack Georgia, not the Middle East, not the East European Georgia, but Georgia or Florida or California, if it just suits our foreign policy needs in this very moment, right? What does that say about Joe Biden? What does it say about, and then the fact that it's like completely uncovered. Like Der Spiegel comes up with this and people are like, wow, that's crazy. Do you know there's rioting in Philadelphia? like it's just like, what? This is a huge revelation that none of the Republicans talked about at the debate stage. It would have been a great talker. They just said, why would we give money to the people who just attacked, Germany?
Well, it raises the question of how serious are these candidates actually.
Yeah,
right?
and also like just how risky it is to get out in front of that too. Like we have a higher risk tolerance.
And
right?
well, it's also just risky because you'd be losing donor money too, right?
Right. I mean, unless your donors are largely
Nikki Haley was on the board of one of these, like Raytheon or something, right? Like
not surprising at all, given her rhetoric.
Like, there's only one.
Not Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. How dare you, sir?
They're all the same. They're all the same.
Joking.
But there's only like 1.5 candidates that are actually against what's going on here. Vivek and then half of DeSantis.
So Vivek, when you watch our podcast, steal our talkers, bro. I'm telling you, this is a winner. We can't give money to the country that is blowing up Germany's pipelines. That would be wrong. And it shows how corrupt the media has been about this, how like they are ideology first and truth second in so many ways. Because the ideology first part is, it must be Russia, despite any evidence or any rational conclusion. And now all the material evidence is pointing to Ukraine.
Well, I don't know if you've heard, like Putin's just a madman. He's crazy. He would even do things that would be against the interest of his own country. Like he's just right? Like that.
But
that's the media
never use nukes. He's too rational. Yeah. So, one more thing. An interesting, really insightful piece at the very end. They go into why so many people in Germany, especially the heads of state, want to keep their head in the sand. And I quote, "Politically, it is easier to live with what happened if it remains unclear who is behind the attacks. The process is not being hindered, but neither is there much support from the overarching government ministries to figure out who did this." That is the most dangerous place you can be as a government, where you don't want to know the truth, so you really don't push for it politically, and then people never find out and you can't hold accountable. So like, I don't think our Germany listenership is large, but good God, could you imagine how disastrous that would be if you literally have people freezing to death in the wintertime because they can't heat their homes? That is so, like, your suffering goes up by so much, and your own government's like, yeah, but it's really important for us to support Ukraine, so we really don't want to know who actually did this or get to the bottom of it. That's just, it's gross and disgusting and frustrating.
Well, yeah, and you just think about, how could your priorities be so off? You're going to let your own people freeze or pay exorbitant energy prices for what? Mm-hmm. For what?
We got to save
Mother Gaia. To defend democracy, man. Come on.
And we got to save Mother Gaia too.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is like if you're an environmentalist, and you support Ukraine, where are you at now? Where is Greenpeace right now? Greenpeace is actually part of the investigation, which is interesting.
Oh,
yeah.
Are they supporting the investigation?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was as part of like the overall group of total people, because this is the largest environmental act of terrorism in the history of the world.
That part definitely goes unsaid. Like that's huge.
Yeah. So if you're a lefty environmentalist and you're looking at this and you've been supporting Ukraine, and then Ukraine turns around and does this, doesn't that cause you to question your support?
Yeah, it certainly lets you know exactly where their priorities are.
Right.
Not with saving Mother Gaia.
I also want to know too, like we covered the Discord leaks, but I think we noted this when we were covering it. I haven't gone back and looked. But a lot of this, actually, the fact that the CIA knew and the State Department was operating on this premise is part of the Discord leaks. And that's also mentioned just because. So we have like direct evidence that the U.S. government knew about this and was making actions about it.
So maybe it wasn't the U.S. directly, but the U.S. was certainly not stopping these Ukrainian operatives in whatever capacity they were operating from actually carrying out this attack.
So Der Spiegel puts the U.S. in a very different situation than Seymour Hersh does, where he said that Der Spiegel case is that the U.S. was on the right side of this, and they're saying, hey, don't do that, even though, what we're about to get into is Seymour Hersh's narrative. So the and what the Discord leaks do seem to suggest that the quote U.S. had intelligence had detailed Ukrainian plan to attack the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
You know, speaking of the Discord leaks, if you want to leak information to us in our Discord, we just put out the public.
Nice.
We just put out the public link where you can join us and share stories with us.
Please give us some stuff that's gonna put us on a
Sorry,
list.
I had to.
At very least, send us some good memes, okay? That's really all we ask.
So Seymour Hersh, this is the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He's the reason why we know who the My Lai massacres are. Terrible actions by the U.S. Army during Vietnam. He's the reason why he helped break. He's one of the reporters that broke Abu Ghraib and the torture files and all the things like that. So a heavyweight of American media going all the way back to Vietnam War and what was the guy's name? Deep Throat, and the actions by the Nixon administration to, blackmail people. Stop smiling. I said the word.
I was looking at Joe. Joe's being a child.
I didn't name him. This is his.
It just caught me off guard as well. I was like, Deep Throat? Jesus, what?
So this guy goes way, way back. Like, he's the OG of American media, and he comes out earlier this year with the revelation based upon conversations with intel officers that are in the know that America was actually the one who blew up the Nord Stream. So one of the things that he notes on this one that also gives people a lot more information that we want to empower you with is that Russia has more than a dozen pipelines to get oil and gas out of the country and for sale. Nord Stream was picked because it could be done with the highest amount of plausible deniability. The organizers thought it could be used as a deterrent, right? The idea was to put it in there and then back channel stuff to Russia, say, knock it off or we blow up your pipeline, and then blow it up if they fail. So Seymour's most recent stuff on this says that several public examples of the State Department officials obliquely threatening Nord Stream. We've covered that in some before, but we have one right here to show you right now. These are the things that I think bolster Seymour's account the most, because these are like quasi-public, like if you had the charges planted and you're saying on behind the scenes, you would put this out as your more overt threat in the press.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Will you commit today to turning off and pulling the plug on Nord Stream 2? You didn't mention it. You haven't mentioned it.
As I already said, we are acting together. We are absolutely united, and we will not taking different steps. We will do the same steps, and they will be very, very hard to Russia, and they should understand.
That second guy talking was the German chancellor, if you are listening, audio only. What this suggests is this is when the planning would be in phases, right? To do this, like they're training the Navy or the SEAL group that would actually go do this. They'd be arranging at this time the plan to pull this thing off. And Biden so confidently saying that. And we also have Victoria Nuland, for example, saying we're all after the fact doing this victory lap, saying we are all happy that this is now a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
It's crazy that Putin would bomb the pipeline that we're threatening to disable. It's crazy that he would do that.
When you really juxtapose those two things, it's pretty stark, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just interesting to me that maybe we're all on the same team. I don't know. It's weird.
It's a simulation, so anything's possible.
So the stated motivation turned out to be false. The real motivation was, quote, according to the intelligence officer that Seymour has now talked to again, was, quote, part of a neocon political agenda to keep Scholz and Germany, the chancellor we just saw, with winter coming up and the pipeline shut down from getting cold feet and opening up. Right. It was just pure politics. The shuttering of Nord Stream 2, the White House, quote, the White House fear was Putin would get Germany under his thumb and then he was going to get Poland. Now, interestingly, this week, Poland has said that they're cutting off support for Ukraine.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So it failed, at least for Poland's case. And I think Germany is now under, a lot of pressure to figure something else out. And of course, what Seymour has pointed out to repeatedly this year is American liquid natural gas providers are making a killing right now, selling natural gas to Germany in tanker trucks and stuff like that to make up for it. And it is a real mess that unfortunately, if you spent, like that short we did, if you spent the Bush years very concerned about, wars for oil, wars for natural gas are also bad. And if that's, whether it's dominated by the mercantile interest or by the interest just to wage war on Russia, to degrade their military, not to defend Ukraine, those are two different aims.
It's important to recognize how much of a disaster Germany's in right now. Like, Germany had like a record high climate related deaths is the way that it was phrased over the summer, people dying of heat. But a lot of that is because of environmental interests saying that you can't use air conditions, right? And then we have like going into the winter, there's going to be probably devastating issues here because is there going to be a bunch of restrictions on heating your homes because of everything?
What's just the price?
Germany's, and just the price of everything's going up. And then you have like the breadbasket of Europe is everybody's rioting because they're limiting the farmer. Europe's in a mess right now, especially that region of Europe.
Crazy time.
And the war has made Russia far stronger on the international stage in many ways because Ukraine's been taken out of the picture on the global food market. Russia's making up for that and exporting more. That also is bad. Russia being driven in the hands of China. The neocons had done this really interesting thing. They watched Vivek get a bunch of support for saying the war is driving Russia into China's hands. And now they've said, oh, the biggest threat is Russia and China being together. So that's why we have to fight the Ukraine war in order to keep them from...
Yeah, in order to fight them both. Vivek's entire stance is that we need to try to come to a negotiation, and part of that negotiation is peeling Russia away from China. And Nikki Haley will once again say, "You're the dumbest person I've ever seen." Right?
But what we need to do is actually just fight a two-front war: one in Taiwan, 20 miles off the coast of frickin' China, and with this island. It's not nearly the same thing. Like people who equate Ukraine to Taiwan, like these are analogous things. It's absolutely silly. Like every simulation, we've covered it before, every simulation that's run on this question, we cannot find a way to win a war against China for Taiwan. Not without losing everything. And I'm talking like our entire naval fleet, substantial amount of our war fighters, all this kind of stuff, until we like get everything there, which is a tremendous amount of loss in meantime. That means the death of sailors and airmen and real human beings, guys. Now, the Taiwan situation is interesting as well because we have this like increased, just like with Mexico, for some reason Republicans are so focused on like reducing Ukraine spending, they have to pivot like the hawkishness someplace else. So they're like, we're going to invade Mexico and we're going to literally make Taiwan the 51st state, and like this whole other thing that's going on that's also very dangerous and disturbing. So I want to highlight that for folks too, is beware of folks who are kind of engaging in rhetoric both those directions.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Zesty Beverages. They're on a mission to unf the standard American diet by crafting drinks with fewer calories and more nutrients from real food. Their lineup of delicious offerings now includes Electric Peak Yerba Mate, postbiotic sodas, keto-friendly, ready-to-drink margaritas, and hard teas. Wondering what a postbiotic soda is? Well, head on over to zestybev.com to learn more and find a retailer near you. Once again, check them out online at zestybev.com. That's zestybev.com.
When you listen to this podcast, the government will probably be shut down at this point. And what you're probably going to witness is a bunch of the news media will be like, can you believe that Republicans shut down the government? Never mind that 2/3 of the existing federal government is run by Democrats. And they're taking a hardline stance on not obeying the Constitution. And that's how we got to here.
So what is the constitutional method for funding the government versus what we have now?
Bills originate. The president proposes a plan, but that's more traditional, not constitutional. The House passes, the Senate passes, the president signs. If the Senate objects to the House, they change it and send it back to the House. What we've done is, since the late 90s, as you've listened to the podcast previously, is done these continuing resolutions that just spend last year's amount plus whatever. And so if you're listening to the Human Reaction podcast, you already know what's going on. You already know how to think about this. But I do want to know, there's been a lot of changes. A lot of things have moved in the meantime. We are now up to, milk on veterans back in July. So one of the great questions that you should be asking everyone who talks about this is, did you know that the House passed the veteran funding and military funding in July of this year, before the August recess, and the Senate has yet to take it up? Very simple.
So the House passed a bill out to fund veterans affairs, and what'd you say, MilCon?
Yeah, it's like the military, other functions that aren't like overseas.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
so that was funded and passed by the House in July, but it's not passed into law because the Senate hasn't brought it to the floor.
But you don't want to know why?
Why?
Yeah, because it isn't a continuing resolution. because it only funds that part. And they're like, well, we want to do continuing resolutions.
Because the way that they should be doing it is 12 separate bills, right?
Yes. And so we now are up to 4. We also passed the overseas, homeland security, and state foreign ops. Agriculture got brought up this week and failed. The reason why it failed is because moderate Republicans voted against it because it repeals a bunch of government paying for abortion stuff. So conservatives, who are the difference makers here, have charted this pathway to get actual conservative policy support. Now, one of the frustrating things, if you look on Drudge or Breitbart or Blaze or whatever, everyone talks about how stupid this plan is, rather than saying, hey, the conservatives are actually getting conservative wins. Right now, if you're a strict constructionist to the U.S. Constitution, and you look at the bills that are waiting for the Senate to be brought up to be funded, you're going to find all the things that the federal government is actually supposed to be doing. Foreign policy. It funds those things, and it hasn't funded anything else. Now, should it fund anything else? That's a different question. But this is like, if they want to go ag, we're literally talking about 90% of total government spending out the door and funded. That means a 10% cut. These are all good things. But as usual, conservatives, shoot themselves in the foot and are basically playing this strange game where they're like, half of them don't like this strategy because they don't want to have bad press. The other ones are saying, I'm not going to vote for a bill I don't believe in. I'm not going to vote for continuing resolution. So what are you going to do? And so we're in this place where they're trying to play a guilt game with these folks and, trying to basically get these conservatives no longer to do what they said they're going to do, which is get back to regular order and support a continuing resolution, while completely avoiding and not talking about the fact that the Senate is not taking up the funding bills that they currently have to go. And that's all Chuck Schumer's fault. That's the appropriations in the Senate's fault.
Simply because they want to do a continuing resolution. They don't want to use what you call regular order, right?
Right. And the reason why they don't want to, they don't like continuing resolutions, because then you actually have to debate things by issue area, and you have to have a budget by issue area, right? So you have to have a veteran budget, and how big is that going to be? Rather do that in one big bill where you can hide all the spending, all the bloat, all of the $33 trillion debt BS. You actually have to go through a process and hold each government agency to some kind of account for what they're doing, for how much money they're going to get. And then additionally, that the policy, right? Republicans, don't want to have to debate abortion in the ag bill. They don't want to have to debate transgender surgery being paid for by the military, for example. They don't want to have to have those debates because they want the media to like them rather than running to get policy done.
Well, it makes sense. They want to be reelected, so they don't want to give
I don't think that's how you get reelected. Right? That era's changed.
Well, they just don't want the attacks.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of these Republicans that are deciding that the most important thing to do is to get good press and not fight for actual conservative policy are likely to have a lot of problems in the next 2 years. Because I think this is a good watershed moment. where you have Matt Gaetz, who's becoming more and more popular all the time, leading the charge amongst between 10 to 25 conservatives to say no more. And that's like what the Tea Party was about. That's what all of the grassroots movements that made up the Republican Party's core support has been about. And they're actually doing something about it. And then, everyone else is just listening to NPR for their opinions about this shutdown, or CNN. Like, even Fox News is talking about it in not the most friendly way.
Well, that's actually kind of, I'd be curious if there's polling on what America's, like the general public's opinions are on these government shutdowns, because it's like every single year we get slammed. There's government shutdown looming. It's going to happen, all this stuff. I wonder if it's overplayed now to the point where the American public just isn't really that concerned about it anymore. Like, it definitely feels that way among Republicans, but maybe. I wonder about middle of the road people at large.
The last shutdown, I was in D.C. working for a congressman. And my experience with that was largely us doing the thing we were doing to get the government funded to try to restrain spending, and the press saying, "Can you believe the government is so irresponsible? It's shut down. And now you can't go to the national parks." And we're like, you should totally be able to go to the national parks. There's no reason to close the national parks. You actually spend more money closing the parks than you do not closing the parks, because you got to send someone up there with a truck to close a gate.
Well, and
but this is a ploy. This was a ploy back then by the Obama administration not to be held accountable for spending. And rather than the press saying the Obama administration is using the spending fight to keep you out of the national parks, they blame the Republicans. That's how the corporate press works, right? So that's the fear. That's the we need to play the media's game, because last time we lost in 2013, I think, is why the moderate Republicans are approaching it the way they are.
Yeah. Well, because I saw a Rand Paul tweet. I was just scoping through what people were talking about with the government shutdown. And this Rand Paul tweet here, he was saying to avoid a government shutdown, I will consent to an expedited vote on a clean CR, a continuing resolution, without Ukraine aid in it. If leadership insists on funding another country's government at the expense of our own government, all blame rests with their intransigence. Intransigence.
Yes.
I know how to read
words.
I know words.
and that's one of the reasons why so much of this has been a problem, right? So plenty of the other bills that have come up have had a ton of amendments, and because conservatives have held their ground, they haven't been able to really pass a lot of the largesse that they want out of these appropriation bills moving to the Senate now. And a lot of these folks, one of the big pivot points is the Ukraine war. And Republicans are now have to respond to the incentive. 70%, according to what I saw earlier this week, Republicans don't support this funding. They think we've either given them enough or we should never have given them money in the first place. 70%. How do you, of course, Republicans, if they're going to represent those people, need to actually change that position and push to stop the funding.
And our rep here in Montana, Matt Rosendale, is amongst the group that's pledged to vote no on this stuff, right?
Yep.
As are, what'd you say, another, 11? 12? There's a handful. I've got a list here.
Yeah, it depends on the vote. There's been, for example, today they voted for a CR this morning in the House, and 25 Republicans voted against it.
Wow.
So, it just depends. Different ones are getting different amounts. But yeah, somewhere between, I think the loosest would be this 25. The smallest group would be about a list of 10. But Matt Gaetz has kind of become the ideological front runner of it.
Yeah, he's the center of a lot of this stuff, and he was during the speaker fight too. It was you had four main holdouts. Rosendale was one of the main four. It was Boebert, Rosendale, and Gaetz, and someone else. I can't remember who. Then there was a bunch of kind of lingering helpers involved in all that stuff, but Gaetz really seems to be the standout person when it comes to these fights. And good on him. He's got high energy. He's kind of young, youthful, everything. He's had a lot of attacks thrown his way too. But yeah, good on Gaetz for being good on this stuff.
Yeah, I do find it interesting. You've got this tweet pulled up, another one from Rand Paul, and it's a picture of Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell. Is that right? Yeah. I don't know. I always get him and the other guy, Lindsey Graham, confused.
Same person.
You're right. This tweet says, the look on their faces when they learned the Ukrainian government workers would be paid during a shutdown, but not American government workers.
Yes. This was an announcement by the Defense Department saying they're going to continue moving the dollars out, the committed previous dollars that were set to go to Ukraine there that haven't been dispersed yet. They're going to continue going out while the government shut down.
Of course, because why not?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for me to look at this and go, the government isn't actively trying to just piss people off as much as possible. Because that's what I see as the outcome here. It's like, and obviously the media is going to spin the narratives the way that they want to. But really, what do they stand to gain from doing an unpopular thing, sending more money to Ukraine while we have so many problems here? Inflation's running rampant. Infrastructure is failing. We have all these threats of government shutdown, closing all, of these things, government services in the United States. But, but we're still going to send money to Ukraine. Like, what? Like, what are they trying to do with that?
I think it shows how strong strategically the rhetoric has been. Like RFK, I think, has been one of the biggest people on this, but like, I'm glad the Republicans are taking this rhetoric too, of like putting the impotence on like, Ukraine government's getting all this money, but us at home are not getting this money. And you can kind of just fill in the gap of whatever your pet project, your pet funding thing is. It's just like, just always remember Ukraine's getting money, but this isn't getting money. It's just a very good strategic point to drive home.
It does feed like a government should spend more money, not less problem, but I would rather. It's
purely
I too.
Yeah, it's the game
despite
theory. It's the game theory that's important.
Yes, totally.
Right?
I would rather spend the money in America, even if it's spent by the government than not. I think it should be spent by individuals, not the government.
Well, and you could use it from any.
Give me
like,
both.
It's a good attack vector for someone on the left like RFK, and he can be someone like Ukraine's getting a bunch of money, but the money's not going into Medicaid, or or it's not going into infrastructure. It's not going into like you could use it for anything. It's just a really good strategic.
The border is the
thing.
one for the Republicans.
Yeah,
right?
and that'll be kind of a vague, but we won't defend our own border, right? That's important to understand.
And that's
I think
also
it's
reasonable, right? I mean, there's been a lot of calls for more Homeland Security resources for a very long time, but we were spending it in Afghanistan.
I think that rhetoric has played a major role in why the approval ratings of us being active in Ukraine have been plummeting so hard. Like, it's important to recognize that fact.
I wish the American public responded to, we shouldn't get in a proxy war in Ukraine with a nuclear armed opponent that has the most amount of nukes in the world and hypersonic missiles, because we don't want to blow up the world. I wish that worked, but a lot of the American public is like, but the world's not going to blow up. Come on. It's never blown up before.
I think it's important, like, just from a strategic element, you have to understand the game that you're playing. You have to understand the strategic game theory. It's like, this is often the problem with libertarians and their rhetoric is they're always like, it's like they're trying to play backgammon when everybody else is playing chess. And it's like, yeah, your theory is good. Your theory is great. But like, we're playing chess right now. So we need Magnus Carlsen level rhetoric, right? Not whoever the most professional backgammon player is. Like,
I'd prefer to play backgammon personally, but that's just me.
I'm more of a chess guy, to be honest.
Same.
It's an interesting thing.
Things are so crazy right now with inflation that even corrupt government officials are now insisting that they get their back money payments from Egypt in gold bars.
Their what payments?
Influence peddling payments.
Oh, of course.
Senator Bob Mendez from New Jersey, Chris Christie's home state, and his wife are being indicted on bribery charges. The DOJ seizes gold bars up to $500,000. Our favorite House member today, Matt Gaetz, had something to say about it.
We are devaluing American money so rapidly that in America today, you can't even bribe Democrat senators with cash alone. You need to bring gold bars to get the job done, just so that the bribes hold value.
Oh my God.
Flawless execution, sir.
Oh,
I applaud you.
That was clean. Damn. If you would like to bribe us with gold bars as well, we will take it.
I'll take Bitcoin too.
A lot easier to transport. But I don't think Bob knows how to do the Bitcoin. So Democrat colleagues have called for him to resign, but not many. And still quite a few of them, including Montana Senator Jon Tester, is holding on to tens of thousands of dollars of his campaign funds, giving to them while he is under these investigations. And he says he still maintains he's not going out easy.
Bob Menendez isn't?
Yeah, he still maintains his innocence. On C-SPAN, he was caught in the hallways, answered the question. He was like, I'm not gonna pull out. I'm not gonna give money back. I'm innocent, and gets in the elevator.
So how is he claiming that he got this money then?
Yeah.
Oh, there's John Tester. Yeah.
Or just keep talking.
Flat top himself. How does he claim that? You know, that's a great question. I have no idea. I haven't really seen any. I couldn't find any systematic defense. It's a hard thing to defend. I mean, think about it. I mean, gold bullion, like not gold coins, bars. What
are those, like a kilo?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the weight is of a gold bar. I've never seen one or held one in my hand because I'm a poor person.
Well, while you're looking that up, yeah, we have our Senator John Tester being questioned here and just refusing to make comment on his $20,000 that he's not returning.
Yeah,
the staffer's just like, oh, not this. I didn't sign up for this shit.
Senator Tester, why are you still bankrolled by unethical Senator
We're in a bit of a hurry.
If you still want him to resign, why are you keeping his money?
Sorry.
Why
give you my card?
Or why are you still keeping his money?
My email is Sarah_.
Why won't you return his money, Senator?
That's going to be the best way to reach our office for these questions.
I'm sure it is,
Why have you violated
Sarah.
every aspect of your ethical pledge?
So one of the things to remember is John Tester was elected in Montana when his opponent was facing Bernie Madoff accusations, and it got very nasty. So he did all these pledges about anti-corruption and not taking PAC dollars, even though he takes PAC dollars and all this other stuff that he now, of course, is getting pressure on to.
Well, so let me clarify something. So this reporter who is pressuring Tester in the hallway here, he's saying you're keeping tens of thousands of his dollars. Did Tester get money from Menendez?
This is very common, called joint fundraising committees and other things that candidates set up. These are like legal functions to raise money for allies on your side, right? So conservatives have them, and mods have them, and the Democrats, different functions. The Democrats, like the House, like progressive Democrats, have some, and there are all these different kind of tools that they use to help their maximize donating to all the candidates that could matter in a national election.
I see. So Tester got some money from Bob Menendez through one of these sort of pools or whatever it is.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
About $20,000.
And he's not giving it back.
He hasn't given it back so far. So that's one question. I'm not sure that was reported too. That could have been a tracker.
Well, whoever was holding the camera,
Yeah.
For reference, a tracker. Do you want to explain?
Well,
what
yeah, because the
is?
internet lost their mind like a couple of weeks ago when they discovered trackers were a thing.
Yeah.
And like I've been in politics so long, I was just like, well, yeah, of course it is.
What's a tracker?
Explain what a tracker is.
A tracker is someone who's paid for by the opponents to follow the candidate that you don't like around and get them on camera. So that way you can get what was the famous one from Mitt Romney? The binders full of women, or the opposing corporate taxes kind of quotes that got out of the Mitt Romney campaign, because he was at like an event and he was just talking, and then he said something that was kind of unpopular to the larger public, or at least looked weird or was strange.
Yeah, and trackers are just a very common thing, and they're usually just they go to every single opposition event, and they're always got a camera. But then the Mitt Romney thing, I think, is probably even more so. It's probably actually just planting a spy inside there. It's probably
some
less
of those
so
are
just
like
a
inside
tracker.
donor events. That's not usually a tracker, but there's been a lot of examples where trackers have become the story too. There was a candidate in like the Dakotas, and the candidate was trying to call him out in front of all of his supporters, to draw attention to the campaign and how the campaign was being tracked now, and how that was like a problem. And he accidentally or intentionally, I don't know what, uses like a racial epithet to describe the tracker. And it became the story. The candidate got demolished till he had to pull out.
Wow.
Yeah, trackers are a big part of campaigning nowadays. Yep. And they actually have organizations who specialize in just doing that, like recruiting young people to go be trackers.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a lot of gamesmanship around it.
It's too bad that campaigns can't be run on issues anymore. It's all attacks. It's all negativity.
Never been on issues.
It's never been on issues.
Let me rephrase. It's too bad that we can't maybe someday potentially actually run a campaign on issues.
In my libertarian utopia.
Yeah, exactly.
It won't be issues.
It's because democracy is just a big game, and you got to play the game accordingly to how it's played. And just like if everybody was just trying to have sophisticated talk about issues, like that'd be a very different human experience than what we have right now, right?
For God's sakes, Adams called Jefferson a hermaphrodite with the effeminate with neither the effeminate touch of a woman nor the manliness of like a man.
If you read old political ads from like the 1800s, like we're tamer than we used to be.
Wow.
Like our politics is far tamer than
we'll talk about how divisive things were. You're literally talking about elections that we had where one half of the country, like left and then had to be brought back with a war that killed like 60 million Americans.
Yeah.
You have another another part where half of them were loyalists to the crown, and then you had elections. Like these are very tense, polarized times.
Well, and the beginnings of the spark of the Republican Party being created was because of a death on the floor of Congress, right? Like there used to be duels that were happening. People were getting
caned.
True.
Dude got caned on the floor of Congress, right?
House reps.
You know what they say: spare the rod, spoil the rep.
Ooh.
I'm sorry. Come on. That's out of Matilda.
Damn. It's too soon.
It's from a kid's
too
movie.
soon since that guy got killed. I can't even remember the guy's name.
Like 150 years. Yeah, you're right.
How dare you? All right. We got one more thing to show you, and we got to get to it. I insisted. These guys wanted to call it early, but no. We're going to stick with it for one more reaction on human reaction, and that is Laura Ingraham being super, super weird.
Get ready to leave. Uva and Hannah Loreko and Mike, Micah, sorry, I'm messing up. Ramika, sorry, join me now. Great to see both of you. Uva, I understand that you have 2 weeks to return to the local immigration office, the ICE office. Then what?
Yeah, we are supposed to come back in 2 weeks from now to show our passports, renewed passports, to be ready to self-remove our family back to Germany.
Well, Hannah, are you watching this play out at the border of the United States, where 500,000 Venezuelans have already been given work permits without any examination of their claims for asylum, no investigation at all of their claims, yet they're being given temporary protective status. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it is interesting. We try to do it the right way, and we don't get the right to stay here or to immigrate. And now for 15 years, we fight for that right. And it seems there are two faces to this administration.
Well, Uva, do you think you're being discriminated against here because of your cultural views, your religious outlook? Obviously, you decided to homeschool your children because of concerns about government-run schools. Do you think there's a double standard here, at the very least?
Well, of course, we don't know exactly the motivation they want us to leave the country right now. But if that were the case, if they want us to be deported because of homeschooling, then there would be discrimination, and that would be a bad thing. But America used to be a free country, and people from all over the world immigrated here to seek freedom. And we initially got freedom. We got asylum granted by a judge in Tennessee, and it was then the administration at that time, 12 years ago, that revoked it and turned it down. So we are sad that happened, but we hope and believe that there will be a change.
I mean, it seems like your case, at least from everything I understand about your case, and I've read extensively about it, seems like it's the classic case of persecution for your religious views. I mean, that is what asylum was designed for people like you. And yet people like you are being told, bye, essentially. There's something really rotten about this. Uva and Hanalore, thank you so much, and sorry for botching your name. I appreciate it.
I feel less bad about botching all the Ukrainian names earlier now that I'm a professional broadcaster.
that interview just felt very awkward.
It's pretty cringe. But what I want to point out too is she's right. The German government has decided that homeschooling is illegal, and this family didn't want to homeschool. So they came to America.
They did want to homeschool.
They did want to homeschool. Did I say didn't? Sorry.
Yes.
This family did want to homeschool. So they came to America and said, hey, a religion that says that the state education system's evil won't allow us to be there, and so we want to be here. And Laura Ingraham says, yes, absolutely, you should be able to be here.
And they should.
Yeah. Now, when someone lives in a narco state of some Central American country or Venezuela, and they speak up to the government of Venezuela and say, hey, I think these policies are wrong, and I think we should back the speaker, not the presidente or whatever. And then they get a threat and they leave and they go to the southern border. They should also get an asylum.
Absolutely.
So what's confusing here is if they're saying, oh, the president's a hypocrite, they give asylums to Venezuelans but not to these German folks, totally get it. But one of the things that conservatives have been saying, Republicans have been saying, is that no one should get asylum. We should stop asylum seeking because it can be abused, and totally understand it can be abused. But what is your actual standard? What is your actual place that you're coming down to? And this is one of those things about immigration that seems so clear to me that I don't understand why there's not more consensus on, that the system is broken, that it should be a straightforward process. You're seeking asylum. Here you go. Boom. And that that's an objective standard to meet, and either you meet it or you don't, and it's uniform, rather than a situation like this where it's so clearly that, Human Rights Watch, which is a kind of a lefty organization, has even said that the socialist Venezuelan government is well known for their policies of brutality, torture, and political persecution. So people who come to the border have a case to be able to say that, but we say absolutely not. Chinese refugees who are coming through the southern border, because it's a lot easier to immigrate or to illegally get to South America and then come up than it is to just come here, because it costs thousands of dollars and decades to immigrate here legally. Mm-hmm. Of course, what they do is they come in illegally because they don't have a choice. If they're politically persecuted, that's what you would do too. And once again, there's all this panic about, we don't know who's coming in and all that kind of stuff, which is understandable, right? Because the borders are a disaster. But the policy should be not let's stop this process of political asylum. It's how do we create a fast, objective way to qualify who is and isn't, and then go through a process that, a fully funded process to make it quick and efficient.
Completely agree. Yeah, I don't think porous borders are the answer to either case, right? I mean, it's like there should be a legal system for people to come here. Because, this is a nation of immigrants, right? Like we talk about that often, right? Can't do what we do in the United States without, the massive number of people who came here looking for our economic opportunity, and we're able to achieve that. And we certainly aren't embodying that by, prohibiting people from coming here, but which we are currently doing with our legal immigration system by making it so, circuitous and difficult to actually come to the country legally.
Right. And I don't think people understand just how crazy it is. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars in poor countries to immigrate here illegally. Hundreds of thousands, depending on your circumstances. And file cabinets. I'm not talking a little bit of paperwork. I'm talking file cabinets. Like you can find these examples from immigration lawyers of decades of litigation just to come here under an asylum case. So and additionally, we've never, ever in the history of the country ever cracked down on just enforcement and gotten the response that people want. The best case that we have is the Bracero program from the 1970s, where we did two things at once: increase the amount of border enforcement while simplifying and making more speedily and broader the legal immigration process. And then from the Bracero program to today, all we've done is crack down on the legal process and made it Byzantine and difficult while funding more enforcement, and that doesn't work. Additionally to that, you have all the bad stuff that Democrats are doing, such as signaling the signal that they're going to legalize illegal immigrants, which is bad, there's all kinds of bad policies in this space that I actually completely agree with Republicans on. But it frustrates me that it gets broken down into
open borders or closed borders.
Yeah,
right? It's just these words that are kind of vague and they don't really mean anything.
Yeah, right? Or like the rubric is the only solution that actually boils down to that Republicans are willing to support, because they're worried about anti-immigrant sentiment, is funding border security more. Because don't get me wrong, us three in this room, we're like, yeah, we're an immigrant nation. Some people find that offensive nowadays. Some people say that, think of that as like some kind of giving something to the left, which I don't see that at all. That seems conservative to me. That's to articulate the melting pot.
Absolutely. There are immigrants 3 generations back in my family. Of course.
Well, the problem is because putting into context of why there's so much fear that exists, and I think the fear is rightfully so, is we just had Elon Musk yesterday being a better journalist than most journalists, and went down to the border and talked with people, and he live streamed this whole thing, talking to sheriffs, talking to a congressman, and he could literally just like turn the video and be like, yep, there's more people coming through, and there's just like a streamline of people that are coming through, and some are getting processed, some aren't, and then they'll be like, we'll get back to you in a few years about this stuff. Like the entire system is just completely broken and a mess. So like there is a common ground here that I think can be, let's fix the system. But like, and I don't think it's as simple as just like we close the borders versus we have the borders open, which seems to be where the paradigm exists in the conversation. Is like it's much more complicated than that. Like we need immigrants, but we also should probably know who's coming in here. Like there's, I think all of these things can be true. But I very much kind of agree with Elon's sentiment. He just tweeted out earlier this morning. He was saying that illegal immigration should be stopped, but I'm super in favor of greatly expanding and simplifying legal immigration. Anyone who proves themselves to be hardworking, talented, and honest should be allowed to be an American, period. Like, I think that's the general sentiment that we should have here.
Problem is a substantial amount of the voting public doesn't agree with that.
Well, and I
hear that, and they hear giving up to the liberals, right? And that's the problem that we're at. We haven't established the baseline of immigration good in some time, right? Because it's so wrapped up into the Democrats' language matrix, rather than like an upfront engagement with the problem and the solutions.
Well, and that's my problem typically with conservatives on this issue is often like I don't really understand. There's never like a clear indicator of like, do you want no immigration? Do you want some immigration? What are there's no actual dialogue that seems to be happening in that area. And then on the Democratic side, it's just like, are we just letting everybody flood in and we're signaling everybody should come in and get everybody onto the welfare system? And, I don't like either of those really. Right. It's just frustrating because the talk around the issue seems to be incredibly sophomoric. It's just very talking point centric with no actual policy discussion on what should be happening around the issue.
So Laura Ingraham, you're right. These guys should get asylum, but so should the Venezuelans. And I really would wish more Republicans would feature the stories of Venezuelans that are also trying to do exactly the same thing and advocate for a simplified process that is straightforward and objective. And then rather than just the fear mongering in this space, because obviously there's some fear is deserved, but we should be more focused on the policy solutions that would actually make it better. So I think that's it for us. Or wait, one more story.
This is going to be a 5-hour episode.
as proven, go ahead. Why don't you talk about it? You're kind of at the center of the story a little bit more so than I am. So. Even though I want to take credit for it, I take full responsibility for this decision.
Well, so yeah, I will.
I said this probably 8 years ago.
You two are the only two people.
Full responsibility for this.
You two are the only two people ever to mention this idea ever in the history of time.
True and real.
So yeah, back in January, one of our very first episodes, you mentioned it would be very strategic for the Libertarian Party to endorse candidates in races where they could have a greater strategic influence. Well, last weekend at the Montana Libertarian Party Officers Convention, a motion was brought to amend the bylaws to make it possible for individuals and party executive board members and affiliates to endorse candidates outside of the Libertarian Party specifically, even if a Libertarian was running or filed in that race, so long as those individuals, the board, or the affiliate felt that that candidate was going to support and advance libertarian principles, thus trying to execute something along those lines. And this is in direct response to the issues that have come up in the last election cycle with a candidate like Sam Rankin, obviously not a libertarian, coming in, filing as a libertarian, running as a libertarian, leveraging the name recognition of the last name Rankin, which, a very important senator in Montana history, first female senator in American history, correct?
And the only one to vote against the entrance in World War II.
Absolutely.
And World War I.
And was able to do so at the expense of the real libertarian candidate in that race. This is an opportunity for the Libertarian Party of Montana to call those candidates out, which are able to do what they do because we have an open primary system, which doesn't require, it allows any candidate from any party affiliation to run in any race under any party banner. The Libertarian Party is small. It doesn't have the firepower to fight back against that, like the bigger two parties. And so this is a means by which the MTLP can defend itself. And it's an important move for the state specifically that applies here. And I think it's a solid move in a direction that's going to hopefully provide the Libertarian Party of Montana more ability to create influence and to field quality candidates and to support and praise candidates from other parties that are coming the libertarian direction, are advancing libertarian principles in ways that we find meaningful and strategic.
Yeah, I think it's like from a strategic element, like I've been paying attention to everything that's been happening with the Mises Caucus and the Libertarian Party over the last few years. And I'm glad that the takeover had happened because it's a much more strategic lens of how to utilize this third party that does get a significant amount of votes, but utilize it and use it as a weapon against bad candidates and then use it as a support structure against good candidates in the other parties. Like that has been part of the model and the reason for the takeover. So like, if you have someone running in your Senate race who's actually like really good, really high quality candidate that is part of just general libertarian principles, running against it is it's the dumbest thing you could possibly ever do, right?
Yeah,
so you should
strategic.
back up and promote that and then educate libertarian audiences on why this particular candidate of either party is actually a good candidate. And especially if they've proven themselves and they have a solid record, right? But then also just using it as like, we will not give this endorsement, which might give you 3, 4, 5% or something like that. Unless you agree to commit to these certain promises. So it forces them and it moves the Overton window on candidates to be better.
Exactly.
If handled properly. There's some of the executive elements of the Libertarian Party. We'll see if they actually handle these things and negotiate these things properly. But I think it's a smart move to do that.
I think so as well, and I think that there are other components there as well. I mean, this is allowing libertarians in Montana to execute freedom of association, right, and freedom of speech through endorsing candidates that they believe to be good, liberty-focused candidates, regardless of party. And I think that's really important, and I think that it should be supported more broadly. So, and we'll see, how things shake out, but I think it's an important step forward for the MTLP. If you've made it this far, we really appreciate you, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Join our Discord.
Join the Discord. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Human Reaction. Help us fight internet censorship by liking, commenting, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with your friends. To find us around the internet, visit linktree.com/humanreactionpod. And remember,
in America today, you can't even bribe Democrat senators with cash alone. You need to bring gold bars to get the job done, just so that the bribes hold value.